Hello, everyone, and welcome to the One Question Leadership Podcast. My name is Kendi Hilliard, and I'm currently a student athlete playing NCAA Division I volleyball. Let's talk about reflection. As an aspiring athletic director, I believe reflection is one of the most important skills a person can have. As my chapter of being a student athlete closes, I reflect on my experience at the NCAA's Student Athlete Leadership Training, or SALT as we would call it. At SALT, I was able to uncover my core values as well as understand and develop my own leadership philosophy. I also brought some of what I learned back to my administration and my school's SAC. The activities assisted me as SAC president and as a current upperclassman in helping those around me realize that they could be and are leaders in their own right. What I've learned so far is that reflecting on the good and the bad experiences in your career help create a more dynamic leader and organization. Thank you for listening and enjoy the podcast.
Greetings, this is Ty Brown and welcome to the One Question Leadership Podcast, where we highlight executive and organizational leadership. Be sure to follow us on Twitter and Instagram at 1Q Leadership. I am here with Sable Lee. Sable is the Assistant Director for Leadership Development at the NCAA. Greetings, Sable. Thanks for joining us.
Greetings. Thanks for having me.
I'm happy that you're here. You've been in that position for just over a year and a half, right? And since being there are certain programs that you are over, that you're responsible, and actually programs that you have done that you're not responsible for anymore because you left your influence and they're like, okay, the next guy can have them, right? Specifically, the Emerging Leaders Seminar, the Effective Facilitation Workshop, the Student Athlete Leadership Forum, and the Dr. Charles Whitcomb Leadership Institute, the people who are in year one of that institute.
Yes.
I think that's excellent in terms of experience, in terms of developing people. But there is one thing that you and I have in common, and that's a passion for young professionals. I, working with the American Football Coaches Association, when I started there as a graduate assistant, my thought was these head coaches would never listen to me because I've never been a head coach.
Mm-hmm.
So what I'm going to do is stick with the young professionals, the young guys, the graduate assistants, and as they grow, I'll grow. So now by the time they become coordinators and head coaches, then they'll know who I am and I've helped their career. And that's kind of what I did. And I was there for almost 15 years in terms of making it happen. I created something called the Graduate Assistants Forum, which still happens there. It's one of the biggest sessions at the convention. They're always packed. It's a panel of people who have been graduate assistants giving back to the young professionals. And there was just a number of things. Of course, you know Will Baggett. He and I wrote a book called The Blueprint for a Successful Career.
Yes, I love it. I know it very well.
Exactly. A foundation for developing young professionals. And the book is two-sided, right? The foundation for developing young professionals, the word developing is a play on you can be a developing young professional, meaning that you are young and you're starting out and you're trying to figure it out, or you can be somebody who is developing young professionals, right? Meaning you're in a leadership role helping young professionals develop. And so this has always been a passion of mine. I know it's a passion of yours. You've actually done some research that finds numbers on what's happening in our industry, college athletics, but also across the country in terms of young professionals either decide not to work somewhere or not getting jobs or realizing real quick that this is something they want to do. So I wonder for you, why that's a passion of yours. What have you done in the past that kind of emphasized to you that this is definitely a passion, and then where you see yourself going in the future with focusing on young professionals?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I am a former student athlete. So my life has been surrounded by the power of sport and the power that it can help us change and have an influence not only on the sport itself, but the people around it. And so I think my passion for developing people started just from being a student athlete. And then I've had the opportunity to be a coach, administrator, and just really have different touch points around intercollegiate athletics. And I know why I'm passionate about it is because a lot of people have reached back and mentored me, developed me, challenged me, have had very crucial conversations with me, and now having the opportunity to do the same, I think it's an inevitable service, and I think that it's a service that we should all focus on. So I can remember at Texas Tech, I got there and I was in student athlete development and had everything on my job description, but I had a wonderful opportunity to fill a gap that the athletic department needed. And it was not my job description. It wasn't even in conversations when I was first hired on by Lamar Pottinger, but there was a need to develop young professionals. So graduate assistants, interns, and entry-level staff members, and there was a big gap. And so right now we're seeing in the past 50 years, it's gone from 3 generations in the workplace to 5 generations in the workplace.
Yeah, which is crazy.
It's crazy, right? And so when we think about it, back then, that was 2018, 25% of the athletic department were young professionals. So there was this need to develop them. So I started a group called the Young Professional Development Program, where it did not just focus on connecting young professionals, doing community events, or helping with onboarding efforts and pairing people with buddies per se, but we had a pretty robust developmental program we took everyone through either strengths finders or DISC assessments, but also helped with the career exploration and career development side of things. And that sparked my interest in not only mentoring, but creating systems and developmental programs for young professionals. And so, as you mentioned earlier, I'm the program administrator for the Emerging Leaders Seminar. And it's what I was able to do at Texas Tech, but on a much larger scale across many, many different industries within college athletics. But just the blessing that I have to do that alongside the Dee Merritts and the Lamar Pottingers and everyone on our team, just to be able to transform lives and be significant. So we throw this word impact around a lot, but we want to create significant memories, significant opportunities, and significant development within our programs. And so specifically with young professionals, really passionate about researching, like you mentioned, statistics of why certain generations prefer certain things, which is frustrating to some people that are older than even myself.
Right.
But there's a reason why, right? And I think that we need to listen. I think there's people that need to lean in, but I also think that there are some gaps that I would love to dive in a little bit more on to help young professionals to help them know what they don't know.
Yeah, which is important. You did some work with N4A too, right?
Yes.
And I guess you started a committee, or was it a program that still exists? Tell me about that a little bit.
Yeah, so it was the Young Professional Development Subcommittee within the student athlete arm of N4A. And since it has grown to even changing the title to Emerging Professionals Subcommittee within N4A, but co-founded that with Antonisha McRae, who is now with the Minnesota Timberwolves. So she's growing herself, but really started that with N4A with the same notion of there's a gap, right, to develop and to also create a community of emerging professionals within N4A. And that group was extremely pivotal to not only the growth of the others in the subcommittee, but my growth as well, just to have like-minded individuals who were pursuing the same things in college athletics, had very similar challenges, but bridging other more seasoned administrators to help and again, to reach back. So it was a really important founded subcommittee, which is now still growing. And I actually have the opportunity to go back and speak and be significant for that group as well.
Yeah, which is important. Thinking about the work you guys do at leadership development with the NCAA, I wonder about measuring results, right? I mean, you put an event on, you want people to attend the event, right? So, okay, we had this much attendance, but how do you guys measure the results of, was this a successful event? Because you might actually not know for 3 or 4 years until the people who were there go off to do what they do and then come back and tell you it was.
Absolutely. The first thing that comes to mind are our priorities of leadership development, one being building a community. And if you are familiar with NCAA leadership development, you are very familiar with our alumni base. And so, yes, we have metrics. We measure increase of competencies. We measure increases of confidence. Specifically for a program like the Career in Sport Forum, we're measuring exposure to industries. We're matching that with our objectives, but we really measure off of not only our alumni base, but our alumni base's successes. So I think about a program that we have, Pathway, which develops those who are next for the athletic director chair. And we have seen a significant increase of promotions just with that group alone. And so for me, there's many things that we measure, but we measure the successes of participants such as Emerging Leaders Seminar. There are people who I go on many administrators' bios, and at the end, it's listing all of their accomplishments, and it says Emerging Leaders Seminar participant 2014, 2015. And I just think that alone and seeing where they are, now they're senior associate ADs and some deputy ADs. And some of the most significant administrators that we're seeing have been going through our programs, and we'll speak to it as well.
Yeah, I think that's excellent. The country, right, is experiencing something that I guess we could say the pandemic probably helped spur it on, but it was probably happening before the pandemic. And there's this aspect of people leaving people, not necessarily leaving organizations, because in my opinion, there's a lack of leadership development when you talk about mid-level management. And so you go get your first job or your second job and you're working for somebody who doesn't know how to lead. Now it's like, do I even want to work here anymore? So you change job multiple times. I worked at the AFCA for almost 15 years. I don't know if that's happening again. I don't know if people are spending that much time in their career at one place because you can go somewhere else, right?
Yeah.
So I wonder about that in terms of young professionals now that we are post-pandemic and how that's affecting what we see around the country.
Yeah, absolutely. And I appreciate you articulating it around the country and not just specific to college athletics, because I do think there are many trends or many directions that we're seeing within young professionals and administration within college athletics that is specific to college athletics, but a lot of this is a global issue. So 65% of the U.S. workforce, according to Gallup, is not engaged at work. Right. So when we think about how significant that is, more times than not, what we're seeing, and we see these terms of quiet quitting or what, but really it is engagement. And so when we think about young professionals, what does it mean to millennials or Gen Zers or whatever it may have you to be engaged? And so what we're seeing, I'm coming off of reading The Remix, which is a great book that talks about multi-generational workplaces. But what we're seeing is there is a communication gap of understanding of what is important. What does engagement mean? What are priorities? What is really important? And I think there has to be a level of acceptance on both ends and starting to communicate, right? So I know that Google has done a study, and they have the 20% rule. So 20% of each person's job can be a passion project or something that they care about that might not be directly related to their job description, but they found that keeps employees more engaged. And so I always am encouraging young professionals, what are you doing outside of work? What do you like to do? My example of the YPD program had nothing to do. Staff development was not in my job description, but I had a mentor and a supervisor who accepted that was a passion of mine. So I think it's a two-way street, but I also think we need to acknowledge and to realize there's a responsibility to understand what we like and what we are passionate about and pursue that and figure out a way to fit that within what we do every single day at our work, and making sure that it's aligning for the betterment of the athletic department or conference office or national office or wherever you are. So it takes work, it takes time, but I think most importantly, it takes communication and then acceptance and support with that. And I think that will help keep, again, from a global standpoint, people more engaged in work. COVID really, to your point, I think increased the timeline of where we were going inevitably. But again, to my point, there's 5 different workplace generations, right? And so from baby boomers, there was completely different necessities and needs when in the 80s when things were being solidified and they had an opportunity to create all these systems. And now we're just seeing a lot of different facets of generations' needs, lack of understanding, and gaps that I think we need to pay attention to and lean in a little bit more.
Yeah, it's tough thinking about a couple things. You said it a couple times in different ways, but there are generations that are older than me, generations that are older than you, who were trained a certain way and stuck in their ways, right?
Yep.
And so you get a young professional coming in who's excited about the job, but also has these side things, right, that allow them that at some point they can figure out the synergy between their side things and how it can work with the job. But at this point, they're excited about the job, but they also want to do this 20%. They're getting advised to do this 20% of something else, which keeps them engaged. You might have some people who are like, no, that's not what we're paying you for, right? Mm-hmm. We're paying you to do this thing. So that's a question for people who either going into an interview or thinking about starting another job. Do you bring that up? Or if you're already somewhere and you receive this advice and you work for someone who may not celebrate that type of mindset, like, how do you handle that? What are you supposed to do?
Yeah, a couple things come to mind. One, again, I really am a true believer in everything is information. All of the answers that you get, whether you like it, whether you don't, it is information. So if you are in a place where you propose a 20% or a passion project and it's accepted, great. But if you're not, are you a part of something like M4A where you can start something that's a passion project of yours on the side, but you have to accept and understand that that is something on the side, right? And that is where you choose to put your time, and it is extremely beneficial. I'll raise my hand, and I'm an example of just understanding, okay, I might not be able to do this. This might not be possible at work, but I really am passionate about giving back to this association or organization or whatever it may have you. I think there's a level of acceptance of the information that you receive. If you can do a passion project, or if you can do something that your heart is aligned with, and it might be a part of your job description or not, great. But if not, there's so many opportunities. I mean, Ty, we're seeing it right here at Women Leaders of different people who have different needs. I'm happy to help you out on certain things that align with my passions and values that I have in my life right now as well. So I just think it's a mindset of everything is information. If you get an answer that you didn't typically, want to accept, I think accept it, but then move on and broaden your perspective of the other opportunities that you have at store.
When do you suggest that someone consider this may not be the place for me?
Yeah.
Right? In terms of if somebody is not allowing you to do the things you want to do. I mean, like you mentioned, look, bloom where you're planted, do the job you are hired to do at a high level. Right?
Absolutely.
And you may be doing that, but they are not creative, or it's an environment where people just don't see the value in you having your creative projects. They can't see how that will help the organization to flourish.
Yeah.
When do you consider leaving? I mean, I guess everybody is their own individual and things are different, but what kind of advice would you give somebody who's in a young professional role?
Yeah, I definitely think it's very situational, because I have been in a role where I have the majority of the things on my job description I could do and I could do well, but I don't necessarily enjoy doing it. And once I realized that, I said, the time might not be now, and I'm going to put my head down and do these things and do it really well because I can. And I'm very grateful that I have the ability to do that. But if an opportunity comes where a lot of the things on the job description are things that I more so enjoy, and it fits in with the values of compensation or balance or whatever my personal priorities are, then I'll learn more about it. That doesn't mean I would say to pursue it and say check the box. Yep, I'm going, but it's a scale for me to look at a job, which is why I'm in the job I am now. I love doing what we do. I don't enjoy everything that I have to do, but majority of the things that I get to do, I really enjoy, and I'm really good at it.
Right.
And I think the more and more you advance in your career, the more privilege you have to look at jobs and to say, okay, and measure that out. But I don't think it has to be on such an expedited timeline. It's just, again, information. Okay, I'm in a role right now where I'm doing things really well, and there's still growth opportunities, not necessarily the things that I enjoy. I'm doing a lot of things on the side, but I would love to do more at work. Okay, and then I'm going to see this next year out, and then I know what type of measurement, or I know what type of job description I'm looking for next. Because I think what happens is it's starting to feel like, with people that I talk to, there's black and white. So it's either I am in a perfect place and everything has to be matched up to everything that I want and need, or I'm out. Where there's so much gray. And if you open your eyes and you have a perspective of all the opportunities that are at your fingertips, even if some things that you've asked for aren't being given or passed your way, there are so many other things that you're still learning at the same time. So I use the analogy of a table. If there's 20 plates on a table and four out of 20 of those are something that I'm not enjoying or I'm not satisfied with, you cannot discount the 16 things that you have going well. And I think that's what's going on right now, is we're focusing so much on the 4 plates of the bad things and the things that we can be so criticized, and sometimes rightfully so, that I don't think that we're appreciating or putting focus and really diving into the other 16 things that are really awesome, such an opportunity within collegiate athletics or at your institution. So I really try to advise with a balance. But if a place, and I've been there before, if a place and I'm somewhere where it is impacting my mental health, I don't feel a sense of belonging, I have taken a step back in my career where it resulted in I didn't have a job, and I took a step back, I reset, but I also accepted what that decision came with, right? So I went back home, I reset, and I was blessed to have an opportunity to get on the administration side of collegiate athletics. So again, information, acceptance, but still opening your eyes and going forth to the opportunities and resources that we have at our fingertips.
Right, which is important. Thinking about your 20% passion thing. I know you have a podcast, right?
I do. We do.
Tell me a little bit about the podcast. And I imagine, and I may be wrong, you'll correct me, this is one of those things, an outlet that you use to stay engaged with things that you're passionate about.
Yes. And thank you for bringing that up. It is called Start Her 5. It is one of my most favorite things I've ever been a part of. Myself, and those are my sisters now. Those are my best friends. Myself and 4 other amazing Black women in sport started a podcast just to create a space for Black women in sport, but also people who wanted to support and be allies of Black women in sport. And so we don't just talk about sports. We don't just talk about collegiate athletics. Quite frankly, we talk everything under the surface and beneath the iceberg. So you might see our titles, you might see our institutions and maybe our successes and everything, but everything else under the iceberg we touch on. So whether that is our identities, the different problems within the Black community. We recently came out with an episode called Imposter Syndrome, which was extremely powerful and something that everyone faces, all women face, but specifically Black women face it in a different way. And it's just really important to create that space. So one of my favorite passion projects that I have, I also do some work on the side with the Institute for Sport and Social Justice and some other things. But I really do think passion projects are really important. But it just fills my cup in a different way. And in a lot of ways, it's actually therapeutic for me as well.
Which is great. I've listened to a few episodes.
We appreciate it.
I'm a follower.
We appreciate it.
Back to the NCAA Leadership Development. You mentioned all these programs, and there are different ways people can apply to them. I will say that I applied to one way back when I was with the ASCA, and they didn't let me in. And I was bitter, and I might still be bitter about that. But
we'll talk about that on the side time.
But I guess young professionals, right? There's a program. I guess there's an application that's opening up now.
Yes.
What is that program?
Yes. So the Emerging Leaders Seminar, it is held every year in February. So this year it'll be February 8th through the 10th virtually. Historically, it has been in person, but we have found an innovative and creative way for it to be just as engaging on our virtual environment and platform that we created in-house. And so that application is open now through November 11th. But it is an amazing program where we engage with over 50 to 60 athletic administrators, whether through be speakers, presentations, panels, even networking opportunities where participants get to really connect with one another and also have that peer-to-peer mentoring, the peer-to-peer networking opportunities. And again, like I mentioned earlier, just the alumni community that our programs inevitably and naturally create. Emerging Leader Seminar is one of those where it really sparks. I'm an Emerging Leader Seminar graduate. Right. Shout out to my 2017 cohort, but we still speak, we still help each other, still am able to call them up when I'm having any type of challenges, or we're still peer-to-peer mentors. So it's a very good opportunity to not only talk about career avenues within collegiate athletics and continue to expose those, but to talk about some challenging topics. So how to have crucial conversations in the workplace. Emotional intelligence is a big gap that I'm starting to see with our student athletes and young professionals. Just the self-awareness piece, the social awareness, and how significant that is and how you show up in the workplace. So we really make sure that we're bringing key stakeholders, speakers, and presenters to deliver those outcomes and objectives that we have for that program. And I really encourage, if you are a graduate assistant or an entry level or intern within collegiate athletics at one of the NCAA member institutions, I highly suggest that you look into the program and that you apply.
How many participants are you guys accepting?
200.
200.
Yes.
How many applications do you get for other programs?
Oh man, Ty, it is competitive.
Yeah.
It is very competitive. And I always encourage everyone to take that application process seriously. If you go into our program hub, which is where you apply for our programs, there's always a list of questions, and just take the time to think deeply about your answers, because we consider and we read every single one. Our selection committee for each program reads every single application, scores every single application, and we make sure obviously that it's fair and equitable, but we really take the application process very seriously. For example, for our career in sport forum, which is for student athletes, we had 501 applications for 200 spots. And it is very competitive. So I'm always encouraging people to apply and apply again if they're eligible, and take the application process seriously. But it just shows on how needed and how much of a need it is for collegiate athletics to develop our young professionals.
What are you looking for in like the selection process? Because I was on the selection process for the first career in sports forum 1,000 years ago.
Wow.
And I had a super big notebook back when Curtis Holloman was running things. And they send you this notebook and it would come to you and the pages were falling out and you got to go through and read 1,000 different resumes and select the people and whatever the criteria was. So I wonder about the selection process now for the programs, not necessarily the Emerging Leaders program, but just in general, how do you guys decide?
In general, we're looking for individuals who are taking their personal development very seriously. Our programs are not, they're not conferences. They're not, passive learning environments, which is appropriate. We have our NACTAs, we have our women leaders and college sports national conventions, which is great. Our programs, you are going to take a deep dive of yourself. You're going to take a deep dive of your values, where they fit within your career. There's obviously different objectives, but you're going to put in the work during our programs. You're going to be engaged. You're going to be challenged in ways that you've never been challenged before. So we're looking for people who are very serious about their development, who have an awareness of growth, and who have the values that align with ours, and making sure that they take advantage of our transformational experiences and that they value the community that they will be in for the rest of their careers and the rest of their life after they go through one of our programs.
Tell me again the qualifications, like what age range, how long?
Yes, so graduate assistants and interns within collegiate athletics at one of our member institutions. And so if you go on our website, our leadership development website on ncaa.org, you can see all of our programs from student athletes, coaches, and administrators, but specifically on each program's website, you will see the descriptions, you will see who is eligible, the cost, if there is one included. But for this particular program, Emerging Leaders Seminars, it is graduate assistants and interns.
Okay, excellent. I'll ask you this last question, then we'll wrap. You think about advice to young professionals, and you probably can write a book about it, right?
Yes.
But if you had to sum it up, you have 1 minute in a room with 1,000 people, young professionals, who, if you don't say this 1 minute worth of good advice, they will not be successful in life. What do you got?
This is a heavy question, Ty. Can I have a little bit more than 1 minute?
Okay, go on. Tell us what you got.
Well, I think it's understanding. I heard this today, and it touched on how I feel, that your career does not have to be linear. It does not have to be a set timeline that you created after undergrad because you went to some program and they made you set a plan. But it is one where you give yourself permission to align your job, your needs, what fuels you, what drains you to the priorities of your life at that set time. If we were talking 5 years ago, the Sable Lee and her values and her priorities were completely different. But now you're talking to a Sable Lee who's in a relationship, who is grounded, and from a location standpoint, family is different. And I have to give myself permission to pivot and call an audible sometimes. And also knowing that what you don't know, right? I know a lot about a little. And so what I would say is just being humble, also being confident, but understanding what you don't know and giving yourself permission to pivot if you learn something new, to pivot if you realize that, hey, man, maybe this industry isn't for me, or maybe this department isn't for me. The only person that you're answering to is yourself. And, I can remember a time when I was coaching, and I probably should have left coaching sooner than I did. I stayed a little bit longer because I was in a situation, and I can remember my biggest worry was, what are others going to think? What are my mentors going to think that have invested in me as a coach? The ones that have invited me to all the camps. I was so afraid of disappointing them. I was so afraid of disappointing and what others' opinions are. But Tai, none of those people that I was afraid of their opinions are in my office at the NCAA now, right? They are not walking into the building in Indy with me. They weren't with me at all of my other stops. I am with me. I am with the decisions that I make. I am with my priorities. My priorities are my family, my dog, my partner, right? Stability, and making sure that I'm around people like Dee, Lamar, and our entire team. And that the only person that matters to me is myself. And I just want people to know to give yourself permission to stay, even if that job description looks really good and it's just in your heart to stay at this institution, stay. If it's in your heart to make a career pivot and it's really what you want, and your parents and whomever is pressuring you, they're not going to be in the office with you. They're not going to be at home with you. It's going to be you. So I would just tell people to understand what they don't know, to give themselves permission to do what they want to do and be honest with that, and then pursue whatever that is very boldly and just go after it. There's a lot more, and you're right. I could write a book, but that is what I have learned, and I am so happy. I feel so free. I feel so grateful, even when there's days where I'm frustrated. My job is not perfect, but I still have so much more energy to pursue what I get to do, and it's mine. Right. And I don't need anyone else to understand it. It's great to have support, which I do. It's great to have mentors, which I do. And a lot of those mentors that I was afraid of losing, they're still in my back pocket, even though I'm not in coaching. So yeah, I appreciate that question.
Yeah, right there with you. Well, Sable, this has been an excellent conversation. It sounds to me like Dee and Lamar are probably happy to have you on staff. It sounds to me like the people who come through the program specifically that you're responsible for get a great experience that they can take with them and go off and become great or continue to be great leaders. And it also sounds to me that the young professionals that are coming up now and in the future are probably in great hands with people like you doing the things you do within our industry. So I appreciate you joining us.
Appreciate the time, Tai. Appreciate it.
Yes, ma'am. That was Sable Lee. Sable Lee is the Assistant Director for Leadership Development at the NCAA. And of course, I am Tai Brown with one question. And keep in mind, the role of a leader is to create and maintain an environment that people want to be a part of. And as always, be better tomorrow than you are today. This episode of the One Question Leadership Podcast is produced by Spades Media Group, solving problems using creative leadership.